Some places seem to hold their breath, waiting for the world to remember what they once witnessed. In the heart of a desert carved from rose-red stone, there is a silence that does not feel empty. It is the silence of Petra, a city of the dead and the divine, hidden behind a narrow gorge of whispering shadows. But even among its famous tombs and temples, there exists a deeper riddle carved into the very skin of the mountains. These are the stone thrones of Petra, solitary seats chiseled from solid rock, standing empty beneath the relentless sun. They are not tombs, nor are they homes for the living, and their true purpose has slipped through the fingers of time. What they did leave are these monolithic chairs, staring out over a landscape of spectral canyons and endless possibility. Imagine the journey through the sick, the towering walls narrowing, until the first glimpse of the famous treasury shatters the gloom. A visitor's wonder is consumed by that colossal facade, but the thrones hide further in, higher up, reserved for a quieter kind of awe. To reach them, you must climb ancient processional stairways, worn smooth by the feet of a forgotten faithful. The path winds past altars, slick with the ghosts of libations, and obelisks that catch the light like petrified flames. And then you see it, a throne, stark and geometric, as if the mountain itself has grown a seat for a vanished lord. One of the most famous sits atop the high place of sacrifice, where the sky feels close enough to touch. From this elevated vantage, the whole of ancient Petra sprawls below, a cityscape of gods and merchants turned to stone. The historical record tells us the Nabataeans were masters of water and trade, building an empire on frankincense and myrrh. Their wealth allowed them to carve monumental wonders without the crutch of mortar or the dependence on foreign labor. Scholars can map their caravan routes, decipher their coinage, and date their pottery with reasonable precision. And yet, when it comes to the central function of these isolated rock-cut seats, academic certainty dissolves into educated guesswork. Mainstream archaeology first categorized them as places of sacred feasting, where a tribal leader or priest might preside. The arrangement of the stone throne, often flanked by basins and channels, suggests a ritualized flow of liquids. Perhaps water, that most precious desert commodity, was poured in veneration, or maybe something far more visceral drained from the altar. But the theory of a simple chief's chair feels too domestic for the sheer theatrical majesty of the setting. Here, the stone does not just support a body. It seems to frame a conversation between the terrestrial and the celestial. A more evocative hypothesis suggests these were the seats of deified ancestors, a place where the dead continued to rule the living. The Nabataeans worshipped a complex pantheon with a supreme pair, Dushara, the god of the mountain, and Al-Uzza, the morning star. Their aniconic tradition often represented gods not as statues, but as simple stone blocks or empty spaces charged with presence. This profound theological nuance makes the empty throne a perfect vessel for divine occupancy. Could each stone seat have been a permanent home for invisibility, a doorway where the gods sat in judgment? The desert wind, never truly silent, might have carried the whispers of an oracle through these very stones. On the solstices or equinoxes, the sun's first rays slice through the landscape to kiss a specific point on the seat. This was not chaotic quarrying, it was choreography in stone, a cosmic clockwork designed for a drama we can only guess at. Where the archaeological spade falls silent, local Bedouin memory begins to fill the void with a tapestry of legend. Some whispers hold that these are the thrones of the jinn, the spirits of the smokeless fire who built the city in a single night. Others speak of a lost king, buried upright in the mountain, his throne a marker for a treasure far deeper than any Roman could have stolen. These stories, however fantastical, point to an essential truth. The thrones are markers of a profound, unnameable power. A darker, more practical theory has also clawed its way out of the academic labyrinth. Given the deep channels and the sheer drop at the edge of the high place, some researchers theorize a more harrowing purpose. They suggest these were not just altars for frankincense, but platforms for a more desperate currency, the offering of life itself. Ancient historians, often hostile to the Nabataeans, hinted at rituals involving the sacrifice of a sacred king or a chosen youth. If the drought persisted, if the enemies were at the gate, what better place to beseech a silent sky than from this throne of stone? The dual basins, carved beside many of these seats, would have held the proof of such terrible bargains. Yet, this theory is a phantom, impossible to prove without a discovery that would shatter the serene silence of the site. The stone refuses to confess whether it once watched passively over communal feasts or the final crimson moments of devotion. Entering the labyrinth of Nabataean symbolism offers little clarity, for their motifs are a language of celestial geometry. Look closely at a forgotten throne's armrests, and you might find the subtle carving of a crescent moon or a solar disk. These were a people obsessed with the heaven's vault, who mapped their death upon the path of the stars. Perhaps then, the throne was never meant for a human ruler at all. It might have served as a symbolic marriage bed, where the spirit of the land and the goddess of fertility renewed their bond with the turning year. The archaeological record shows that in later centuries, a new rumor of power began to echo through the canyon. A carved chamber not far from the high places began to be called the Throne of the Pharaoh, linking the Nabataeans to the mythology of Egypt. This name is an anachronism. A ghost laid over a ghost, proving that every generation merely projects its own mysteries onto these patient stones. The very word throne forces us into a hierarchy of kings and slaves, a concept the Nabataeans may not have shared. There is a radical theory that their society was a kind of mercantile republic where the real power sat in the counting house, not on a rock. In this reading, the stone chair is a deliberate fiction, a stage prop for a theater of power where a mortal temporarily played God. This ambiguity is the engine of our enduring obsession. The throne is both shockingly solid and intensely evasive. It reminds us that we are walking through a vast, three-dimensional palimpsest where stone has recorded and erased 1,000 functions. The tactile reality of the worn seat fool you. Its purpose is a void around which we build our narratives. The physical erosion of the thrones only deepens the human need to reconstruct their meaning before they vanish completely. This quiet decay presses an existential weight onto the shoulders of every modern visitor and scholar. There is a palpable terror in knowing that the evidence is disappearing even as we hesitate to decode it. This fear has driven a strange breed of human obsession across the centuries, a pilgrimage to confront the stone's silence directly. In the 19th century, the Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt disguised himself to rediscover this lost city, driven by its myth. When he stood before these thrones, he saw not just rock, but the frozen echo of a vast, unknowable procession. The minds that seek out such places are rarely satisfied by dry stratigraphic reports. They demand a story, a connection to the sublime. You might lean against the cool cliff face near a weathered throne and feel the faint vibration of that human longing spanning 3 millennia. It is the ache of an incomplete sentence, the symphony cut off at the interval, the final scene of the tragedy forever erased. The psychological toll of the unknown manifests in the rituals we unknowingly replicate as we stare at these seats. We frame them in our photographs. We touch the stone where we believe a hand once rested, trying to bridge a gap of 2,000 years. Yet the coldness of the limestone pushes back, insisting on the absolute finality of the past. The human element here is a mirror. The throne reflects our own deep-seated need for certainty, for a vertical hierarchy that makes sense of chaos. Without a nameable king, the throne becomes a terrifying symbol of empty hierarchy, of a crown without a head. It is the physical manifestation of the question, what if the meaning we seek was never actually there? The deepest chasm is not the seek, but the gap between the object's monumental certainty and our complete ignorance of its soul. Archaeologists have dug through the sediment of the valley floor for decades, hoping for a scrap of papyrus that names the sitter. They have found pottery shards, charred bones, and bronze coins worn smooth, but the archives of the Nabataeans remain a stubborn void. This profound emptiness has forced science to do what it dreads most, rely on imagination tempered by universal human patterns. We project the rituals of the Hebrews, the Greeks, or the Shang dynasty onto this rock simply because the human brain cannot abide a sacred void. And yet, the stone thrones of Petra defy every comparative framework. They insist on their own unique, silent melody. That melody is one of light shifting across the high place as the afternoon wears on, a slow breath of the earth. To watch the sun set from this elevation is to understand why the human animal seeks the high ground to speak to infinity. As the long shadows reclaim the throne, we arrive at the final, unyielding truth about our journey into the past. We are a species that carves our meaning into stone. Yet time always reads it back to us as beautiful, indecipherable static. The enduring enigma of these seats is not a riddle to be solved, but a profound lesson in the limits of knowing. But sitting on that high, empty throne, the narrative breaks apart into a scatter of rocks, stars, and unremembered prayers. It is a comfort to label the throne a seat of forgotten kings, because a forgotten king is still a human thing, a knowable entity. The horror and the wonder lie in the possibility that we are searching for a kind of consciousness we can no longer recognize. The wind-up there does not distinguish between a living body and a carved stone. It wears both down with impartial patience. In that cosmic indifference, the Nabataean stone throne becomes a symbol of our own fragile mark upon the planet. We erect our monuments, sign our names, and assume the universe will remember the shape of our ambition. But the stone thrones of Petra whisper a more humbling secret. That silence is the ultimate victor in every human endeavor. As you make the long descent back through the sick, the stars begin to prick the darkening ribbon of sky above the gorge. The thrones remain behind you, up in the cold, empty highlands, holding their counsel, guarding their unbroken silence. And in that silence, there is a strange and terrible invitation to accept that some mysteries are not gaps in our knowledge, but treasures in themselves.